Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. Big rumours going around as they always do at this time of the season as to how good Ferrari's next challenger is going to be. Big lessons learned from the most recent season. Rumour has it their car is going to be 95% different to the most recent SF23. This is the same figure that Aston Martin mentioned when they were introducing this year's car compared to last year's car. Can Ferrari make that much of a step, especially given the fact that they were the second highest scoring team in the second half of the season after Red Bull? Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. As I say, speaking of Aston Martin quickly, there was this from Lawrence Stroll. We've seen lots of rumours over the last few days that he might be selling the team to the Saudis. That's the rumour, just because Cognizant is now no longer a title sponsor and it's Aston Martin Aramco Formula 1 team. There have been rumours, especially given the fact that the Saudis apparently tried to buy Formula 1 for $20 billion. There was lots of drama about that because of what Mr. Ben Sulayem said as a result of it. If you guys don't know the story, Ben Sulayem said that's an inflated fee, and Formula 1 management weren't so happy because they were like, okay, we're probably not going to sell to these Saudi guys that want to buy it for $20 billion, but don't tell us what our sport is worth. It's not your job to, basically hurt the cost of our sport, hurt the potential price of our sport in the public eye as our partner. So there was drama, and we know that since then there's been more drama between the FIA and the Formula 1 teams and everything like that. But just because Lawrence Stroll says he's not going anywhere, I plan to run these businesses for many years, does that mean that a very, lucrative offer wouldn't necessarily catch his attention? I'm not sure that's so clear. But let's talk about the whole Ferrari thing. They've confirmed it's going to be February the 13th. Was it last year they did it on Valentine's Day on the 14th? I don't know. But this year it's on the 13th. This is the first one that we've heard confirmed so far. So Ferrari building the hopium already. You guys know how it goes with Ferrari. Next year TM, next year merchants, whatever you want to say. Maybe this is the year. And to be honest, there might be some merit to that analysis because their understanding of the car at the end of last season was significantly better. Leclerc actually overtook Verstappen on pure pace on the same age tyres in Las Vegas. That was the only time in the season, by the way, apart from when Liam Lawson unlapped himself in Zandvoort, which I think was his, it was his first race, wasn't it? Which is kind of impressive from Liam Lawson. The only other time Verstappen was overtaken all year was in Singapore when they had the tyre offset and a few drivers, I think they're Hamilton, maybe 4 or 5 drivers, but I think it was 4 maybe, got past Verstappen on the restart there because of the tyre delta and the tyre age. But that was the only time that Verstappen was passed all year, apart from Leclerc getting him at the end of the Las Vegas Grand Prix, at the end of the first stint of the Las Vegas Grand Prix, when they were on the same age medium tyres or whatever. Now, the Red Bull was then quicker on the hard tyres, but Leclerc and the Ferrari definitely showed that despite McLaren's massive improvement, Ferrari also made a big step. I think it's less of a talking point because of Leclerc's DNS in Brazil and other factors like this, that Leclerc especially was a real factor at the end of the season in many of these races and actually scored more points than McLaren did over the large, we'll see in a second what the data indicates. But this is the first launch date for the Ferrari car we've seen from any car so far, 13th of February. Other ones, of course, to be determined. Racefans.net as well came up with their 12th place in the driver rankings. This went to Bottas. I thought this was, to be honest, really quite high. I think they had Joe at 15th, and I know that Alfa Romeo, and now they're going to be, I'm not going to say the team name again of their new team, we saw that the other day. They are a very anonymous team. They did basically nothing this most recent season. But did Bottas do anything to deserve 12th? They had him above Tsunoda. I think they had Tsunoda 14th, which is, I don't know, I thought that was, and they had, I think, Hulkenberg 13th, right? I thought Bottas probably placed a little bit high here. I'm not really sure exactly what he did to merit this analysis, and, sure, maybe Tsunoda made a few too many mistakes to be too much higher than that, but maybe I'd have swapped these guys around. I think that might have been kind of valid enough. Bottas also mentions on the future of the team. We know full well that Sauber, they're going to become Audi Sauber, they're going to do other things. Joe's probably going to go at some point. They might try and get Sainz in. They might try and get Vettel in. There was a rumor about that. And they might try and get Mick Schumacher in as well. So Bottas says the team has not decided yet the driver pairing for after next year. They've only got contracts up until the end of 2024. I'm sure some things will change over there. I hope we can find a little more pace and I get a car that I can do something with. So I wonder what's going to happen with Bottas. I think at the end of this most recent season, because he was very anonymous after the start of 2022, was just really nowhere to be found. And people wondered, especially with the whole Australian thing, and you know how it goes with Bottas, all the stuff he's doing. whether his heart is really in the sport as it used to be. We've seen this trend, let's say, with other Finnish drivers in the past. You guys might know, one or two examples there. But let's talk about the Ferrari project for next season, because the car will be presented February the 13th, and as Giuliano De Kessa says, 95% of it will be new. It is a question, though, not of superstition, but of downforce. So we know how Ferrari go, and every year it feels like they build a car to be quick at Monza. And the car is quick at Monza, and then they pray that it's going to be good everywhere else as well. But this year's car, according to Formula Uno, is going to be 95% new, 95% different, which is quite considerable compared to. I wonder what this number is for other teams. Now, okay, 95% is obviously like an estimated figure, and okay, what does it really mean? But we saw Horner say the other day that the RB19 was only 40% different, or let's say only 60% of the parts of the RB18 were maintained, which is a lot, right? Like the RB19 was at least half the RB18. There wasn't really that many changes. The Mercedes was probably slightly more so, but from 2022 to 2023, the Mercedes was still kind of similar in terms of concept and design, which obviously backfired quite considerably. And to be honest, in some ways, so was the Ferrari last season. They stuck with some of their ideas from 22, understandably, but it didn't kind of work out. So they're taking what seems to be a more, revolutionary rather than evolutionary approach. Now, Vasseur kind of disagrees with this assessment, but still, if the rumours are indicating that it's 95% new, 95% different, that is considerable, because as I say, that's the figure that Aston Martin came up with last year when they went to the AMR 23, which was obviously a massive revolution on the previous year's iteration. So Vasseur did kind of like a long, a wide-ranging interview on this, talking about like a lot of last year big expectations. He even said the expectation was just too high. There are too many expectations, and that kind of put them in a tricky spot. I think that given Red Bull's dominance, every team is a little bit pessimistic and doesn't have their expectation as necessarily winning the championship, right? Which is probably not ideal. Of course, they want to win the championship, and if the opportunity arises, they're going to go for it. But I think teams are going into this season trying to compete rather than trying to necessarily win, and at least like thinking they can win, which might be a positive or a negative mindset. It's kind of tough to say, but you can't necessarily blame the teams for thinking this way when Red Bull have the leads that they presently have. So Vasseur did this big interview. He also discusses the rumours about Hamilton. We know they've worked together in the past. Vasseur says that for 20 years I've been talking to Lewis like every week of every month because, I've worked with him in the past. In Baku, we talked a little bit, which kind of implies that that's when they were having conversations. Hey, Lewis, like, how about driving the red car? What do you think about that? And Hamilton was like, maybe if you pay for a nice dinner for me, I'll go and meet John Alcan. Maybe send me a Roma or something in the mail, and then, maybe I'll think about joining your team. But of course, that hasn't happened. And Vasseur says, look, if I signed contracts with everyone who raced me in the past, then it would cost me a fortune. But doesn't say that he wasn't not keen, let's say, to have Hamilton as part of the team. There was also some response to the whole Toto Wolff drama. And Vasseur actually said, I think all the stories that have been embarrassing about this, it all started with a newspaper in a situation involving a person. You've got to be very careful about what you say. I think it had been more appropriate for the FIA to take more time rather than let 24 hours, but at least let 24 hours pass between the first and the second announcement on this. A bad situation would have been avoided. Even going on to say that even Red Bull supported Toto in this one, and that is not an easy thing to see or an easy thing to usually do. So, obviously heavy criticism of the FIA and Ben Sulayem's management of the whole thing. You can understand, I think, where the teams are going with this, and it's not going to be the end of that story for now. They also discussed the contract potentially for Charles and Carlos. We know they're under contract until the end of 2024, but after that, of course, it's a different story. Now, we're pretty sure Charles is going to get a bigger long-term deal here than Carlos is, but it kind of remains unseen. So Vasseur says, got a few months ahead of us. We're slightly behind schedule on these discussions, but we want to get it sorted sooner rather than later. We will make a decision soon, he says. Now, he also clarifies that there isn't really a Charles number one, Carlos number two situation. Now, this is what he's going to say publicly. I personally don't think this tells the full story of the picture behind the scenes, especially given Vasseur's past relationship with Charles. Now, sure, on paper, Charles and Carlos were 11 to 11, I think, in race results this year. Qualifying was a different story. Points was a different story as well, especially after that Japan upgrade that Charles really liked and kind of put the car more in a situation that he was happy with. And, they talk about how Charles had the soft tyres on to get past Russell and control him to help Carlos. Now, this is kind of interesting because Charles actually responded to this the other day. So Vasseur says that Charles agreed to, you guys remember at the start of Singapore, Charles puts on the soft tyre, gets past Russell to control him. But actually, Charles said he didn't do that to help Carlos. He did that because it was best for his own race to get the start. Now, it obviously did help Sainz in the end, but Charles said that wasn't the reason why I did it or the reason why we did it. I did it because it was best in my own race. So, I'm not sure it's quite so clear cut on this one. And obviously he goes on to say that, well, the performance is similar. They've, two cars, two valuable drivers. I've got, one good asset and another good asset. I don't want to have a good asset and a second-rate asset, which maybe some other teams have that he might be implying up and down the grid at the moment. But whatever he has to say on this one and whatever he's going to say publicly, I think that, realistically, the situation behind the scenes might be differing somewhat. And obviously, they also talk about the development of the car. So Vasseur says, Charles and Carlos have been very involved in the development of the car from the beginning, and they are quite happy with the situation, although it's not an indication of next year. Now, Charles said the other day, the car's looking really good. Carlos said it behaves differently. So I think that there's maybe some differences of opinion here on what they think about next year's car, but the car is obviously going to be dramatically different. We've seen that over the last couple of minutes. But Vasseur also comments on the idea of, is it going to be a revolutionary car rather than merely evolutionary, especially when we're hearing this 95% figure going around. Vasseur says, revolutionary is not the right word. We've had the same technical regulations for 3 years now, so you can't massively change the design, which is probably fair enough. It's difficult exactly to revolutionize a concept in the same set of regulations. But, the rumor is that Red Bull are going to try, apparently. So we'll see if that works out for them. And of course, Mercedes are going to have a radically different car this new season as well. So there's definitely things you can do. But I think it's probably fair enough that revolutionary is a bit of a too strong word, kind of whatever you're doing. We are in a scenario where what makes the difference is a handful of tenths of a second. Having said that, we're definitely trying to take a step forward. We're going to change 95% of the components. And that sounds like a revolution, but it's not necessarily. So maybe small things, but small things can add up to big changes potentially. So, I'm sure that in due course, Ferrari will come through with the classic. It's going to be unprecedented in terms of speed. We saw that last year, right? You guys remember that famous quote that came out of one of the higher-ups at Ferrari that said that the SF23 is going to have unprecedented speed, basically. And it was unprecedented in the wrong way at the start of the season. But honestly, have a look at this. I think this is potentially surprising to many, given that McLaren had such a good second half, that Ferrari actually quite considerably outscored McLaren over the second half of the season, even with Leclerc's, DNS in Brazil, DNQ in Austin, of course, and Mercedes were the fourth highest scoring team, but Ferrari had 239 points over the last, half of the races, more even than McLaren did. So the upgrades they brought, the development of their car was actually going in a pretty promising direction. And Sainz has talked about this and said that he's, perfectly confident and believes that Ferrari can catch Red Bull based on the gains that McLaren made, but also even Ferrari themselves. That floor upgrade in Japan, okay, maybe they brought a couple more things than other teams did, but it still made a big difference, especially to Leclerc. And the issue that Ferrari have, though, I always think, is that they need their car to be better than Red Bull because their drivers aren't as consistent as Verstappen is. I think Leclerc is phenomenal and Sainz is a really good race driver as well. When he's happy with the car, he can be really effective with it, as he was in Singapore around races like that. But Leclerc is great, but he's not quite Verstappen level consistent. He's there every single week in, week out, just absolutely dominating. We know that Ferrari's strategy, we know that Ferrari's operations aren't necessarily as good. So I don't think you can get away if you're Ferrari with just having a car that's as good. It gets you some race wins for sure, but I'm not necessarily sure it gets you a season victory. Like, imagine if it was actually a Verstappen-Leclerc title fight and Leclerc comes around the formation lap and his hydraulics fail and he crashes into the wall. Like, that's one of those moments that it's just a Ferrari moment. And this year it didn't matter because the championship was done. But next year, in a theoretical world where it does matter, obviously that would be quite the turn up for the books. There's also been talk as well from Tammy here and others like, all right, when is Leclerc signing this new deal? When is it going to happen? The rumour is that it's basically a done deal, but as Vasseur said that, all right, there's still things they need to finalise over the next couple of months, I guess, before pen goes to paper. But very much interested in your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.